She walked in, holding his hand. My wife. My wife. The one I thought I knew. I watched her smile at him, her eyes locking with his like I didn't even exist. In that moment, everything I thought was real shattered. And then, as she looked at me, and the words that came out of her mouth left me frozen in disbelief. What she said next, I couldn't unhear it. It started like any other day, but something felt off. When you've been married for years, you expect the little things to stay consistent, like the small texts she'd send me during the day, little check-ins like, hey, love you, or how's your day going? But over time, those messages stopped coming. At first, I dismissed it. We were both busy, she'd been working late, I'd been focused on other things. But then I noticed her phone was always in her hand. She'd come home late, hardly acknowledging me, her mind clearly elsewhere. I tried to ignore it, thinking it was just the stress of work. Still, it nagged at me. I tried to reach out, made her favorite dinner, prepared cocktails for us, hoping to spark some connection. But she was distant, her attention divided. The way she'd bury her face in her phone whenever I was around, always quick to hide it when I came near. It left me uneasy. But it wasn't until one night, when I glanced at her phone while she was in the kitchen, that things started to change. There it was, a message from someone I didn't recognize. Just checking in. How was your day? It wasn't the first time I had seen something like that. Her secrecy had been growing, but this felt different. There was something about the smile she gave when she read that text. It wasn't just any smile. It was a smile that didn't belong to me. It was the kind of smile you give when you have a secret, when you're hiding something. I tried to brush it off. Maybe it was a coworker. Maybe it was nothing. But it lingered in my mind. And as the days went by, that seed of doubt started to grow. I noticed the little things, the late nights, the quick glances at her phone, the way she seemed less present when we were together. And that doubt led me to pay closer attention. It led me to discover things I wasn't prepared for, things I didn't want to see. But that's when I realized it wasn't just me paying attention anymore. The more I tried to ignore it, the more the pieces started to fall into place. Little things at first. Her phone buzzing in the middle of the night, and her quickly turning it face down when I was nearby. Or the times she'd go out with friends, but I couldn't help but feel like there was more to it. I didn't want to believe it, but my instincts kept nudging me, reminding me of the things I'd been trying to push aside. I thought about confronting her, but what if I was wrong? What if I just misread the situation? I wasn't sure, but I knew something wasn't right. I had to know for sure. It was one of those sleepless nights when I decided to dig a little deeper. I was careful, methodical. I had to be, because if I was wrong, I'd be the one looking foolish. I started looking through her social media accounts. At first, I found nothing. But then, there it was, pictures from a night out with her colleagues. And in almost every photo, he was there. The guy she worked with. His arm around her, too close for comfort. The kind of touch that said, I'm not just a coworker, I'm someone special. I didn't know who he was, but it didn't take long to figure that out. It hit me then. It wasn't just a passing flirtation or harmless friendship. She was seeing him. She was with him. My gut had been right all along. I couldn't stop myself from going further. I checked the message history. There it was again. His number, P. Her texts to him, late at night, playful and intimate. My stomach churned. I felt sick, betrayed, but still, I needed to know more. I had to confirm it. I wanted the truth, even if it destroyed me. By now, I had gathered enough. I could see the patterns, the late hours, the guarded conversations, the secretive behavior. It was clear she wasn't just working late anymore. I wasn't wrong. And now, I knew I had to act. But how? How do you confront the woman you've built a life with, the woman you trusted, with something so painful, so undeniable? I didn't have an answer yet, but I was getting closer. I didn't rush into a confrontation. I knew this needed to be done carefully, and I needed to be prepared for whatever came next. The discovery of her affair wasn't just a blow to my trust. It shattered everything I thought I knew about our marriage. But the idea of confronting her, of tearing down the life we built together, scared me. I wasn't sure how she'd react. Would she admit it? Deny it? Or worse, would she turn everything around on me? I had my answers, and I was more certain than ever. But I decided to keep my cool. I wanted to be calm, collected, not rash. I needed to know that I wasn't being manipulated or gaslit, that I wasn't overreacting or imagining things. So I waited. For the right moment. The tension between us grew daily. She didn't know it yet, but I was already planning what I would say. I didn't want to accuse her without her saying anything, but at the same time, I couldn't just let things go. It wasn't in me to pretend everything was fine. One evening, I came home earlier than usual. She was in the kitchen, phone in hand, her back turned to me. It was quiet, too quiet, and I could feel the weight of everything that had been left unsaid hanging between us. I approached her slowly. She didn't notice me at first, too focused on whatever was on her screen. I cleared my throat, just enough to make her aware of my presence. She froze for a moment, her body stiffening. It was like she already knew what was coming. She turned around, smiling nervously. "Hey," she said, her voice strained. "Hey," I replied. My voice felt hollow, like it didn't belong to me anymore. I stepped closer, trying to steady myself. I had to say this without breaking down, without letting her see how much this was destroying me. "I need to ask you something," I said. "And I need you to be honest with me." She gave a small nod, her eyes flickering toward the phone in her hand. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. It was forced, and I hated that I could see through it now. "Are you seeing someone else?" I asked, my voice calm but firm. For a moment, she didn't answer. Her eyes darted away, as if searching for something, an excuse, a lie, anything to protect her secret. But she couldn't hide anymore. I already knew. She opened her mouth to speak, but the words caught in her throat. The silence was unbearable. Her silence hung in the air like a weight, pressing down on us both. I could see the struggle in her eyes. She wanted to say something, anything, to deny it, to cover up the truth. But the truth had already slipped through the cracks. She swallowed hard before speaking. I don't know what you're talking about." Her voice was shaky, but she was still trying to play it off, trying to act as if this wasn't happening. I took a deep breath, holding my ground. I had the evidence. I didn't need her to confirm it, but I wanted to hear it from her. I needed to hear it from her. "Don't lie to me," I said, my voice low. "I know about him." Her face froze. Her eyes widened slightly, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of panic. She opened her mouth, then closed it again, as if she were weighing her options. I waited, letting the silence build. You don't understand," she finally muttered, her voice barely above a whisper. I stepped closer, my heart pounding in my chest. "I understand everything better than you think. I saw the texts. I saw the way you look at him. I saw the pictures." Her face twisted, and she looked away, her breath quickening. "I didn't mean for this to happen," she said, her voice shaking. "It just happened, and I didn't know how to stop it. I didn't know how to tell you." I felt my blood run cold. "So, you did mean to do this, then?" She didn't respond immediately, and for a moment, I thought I saw guilt in her eyes. But then the defensiveness crept back in. She took a step back, pulling her phone closer to her chest, as though protecting it from me. "I didn't want this to hurt you," she said, her voice breaking. "I never wanted to hurt you. But it was too late. The damage was done." And as she stood there, trying to explain herself, I felt nothing but cold emptiness. The woman I had trusted, the one I'd built my life with, had just confessed to betraying me. I could hardly breathe. I turned away from her, not wanting to hear any more. "I don't want to hear it. Not now. I need time to think." As I walked toward the door, she reached out, but I didn't turn around. I couldn't. This wasn't the woman I had married anymore. And I was done pretending. I left the house, the door closing behind me with a finality that echoed in my chest. The cool air hit me like a slap, and for the first time in days, I could breathe. It was strange, though, no tears, no anger. Just a heavy emptiness. I drove aimlessly, not really thinking about where I was going. The streets blurred by as I turned corners, letting the quiet hum of the car drown out the chaos in my head. I didn't know what I expected from this conversation, but I sure as hell didn't expect it to feel like this. She had admitted to everything, and still, I was numb. Maybe it was shock, or maybe I had already known. Maybe I had been ignoring the signs, hoping they weren't real. But now that the truth was out, it felt like a bad dream, something I couldn't shake off. I found myself at the lake, the one we used to visit when we first started dating. Back then, it was all sunsets and quiet walks, hand in hand, talking about our future. The contrast between then and now was so stark, I could hardly stand it. I sat on the edge of the dock, staring out at the water, my thoughts swirling. It wasn't just about the affair anymore. It was about everything. The years, the trust, the life we built. Everything felt like it was crumbling around me. But I didn't have time to wallow. I couldn't. I had to think about what to do next. I couldn't just let her walk away from this without facing the consequences. I'd spent years building a life with her, sacrificing, compromising, and now, everything felt like a lie. I took out my phone, staring at the screen for a moment before I dialed a number. My best friend, Oz. I needed to talk to someone who wasn't caught up in this mess. Hey, he answered, his voice filled with the casual tone that I usually relied on. You good? I hesitated. Not really, but I will be. What happened? He asked, sensing the shift in my tone. I took a deep breath. She's been seeing someone else. And I just confronted her. He didn't say anything for a long moment, but I could hear him processing. What are you going to do? I don't know yet. I need a plan. I replied, my voice sounding more confident than I felt. I didn't tell him everything. There were details that I wasn't ready to share. But I had made my decision. I was done being passive. This wasn't just about forgiveness anymore. I hung up the phone with Oz, the weight of the conversation settling in. It wasn't just about confronting her anymore. It was about taking control. I didn't know what exactly that would look like, but I knew I couldn't sit back and let everything slip through my fingers. I had worked too hard, sacrificed too much to let her betrayal go unanswered. I needed a plan. But before I could start figuring out the details, I had to process the immediate aftermath. I couldn't go back to the house. Not yet. Not after what had happened. So I drove. I drove without a destination, hoping that time would give me some clarity. As the hours passed, I thought about all the little things she'd done over the past few months. The secretive phone calls, the long work hours, the way she would smile at her phone and look away whenever I caught her. I felt stupid for not seeing it sooner. The signs had been right in front of me, but I had been too trusting, too comfortable in our routine. I had let the small things slide, thinking they were just phases. The betrayal wasn't just in the affair. It was in the lies she told, the trust she shattered. I knew what I had to do, but I wasn't sure how to start. I couldn't just walk back into the house and demand answers again. That wouldn't solve anything. I needed to be smarter about this. I decided to start with gathering the evidence. I wasn't going to let her twist the narrative. I needed proof, not just the texts and photos I had seen, but the whole picture. I would gather everything, catalog it. Then, when the time was right, I would confront her again, not with anger, but with undeniable facts. It felt cold, almost like a game. But that's what it had become, hadn't it? She had treated it like a game. Now I would too. I wasn't going to let her leave me with nothing but confusion and heartbreak. I returned home late that night, hoping she would be asleep. The house felt unfamiliar now, like a place I no longer belonged. When I opened the door, she was sitting on the couch, her eyes red from crying. She looked up at me, but I didn't say anything. I couldn't. Not yet. I just walked past her and went into the study, where I started organizing my thoughts and gathering everything I could find. She didn't follow me. Instead, I heard her retreat into the bedroom, her soft footsteps barely audible. It was the quiet before the storm, and I wasn't going to let it pass without a plan. The next few days were a blur, a mix of frantic searching and carefully calculated moves. I couldn't let her see how much it was eating at me, so I kept my distance. I still hadn't fully processed what had happened, but I knew that I couldn't allow her to just walk away unscathed. She had betrayed me, and I wasn't going to let her get away with it. I spent hours combing through her things, her social media, emails, even the hidden corners of our shared accounts. I wasn't just gathering evidence. I was learning about her in ways I hadn't expected. It wasn't just the affair with P. There were other things too, things that had slipped by unnoticed. A sudden shift in the way she spoke to me, the little jabs, the distancing. It had all been there, waiting for me to see it. But now that I had the truth, I knew what I had to do. I started by making subtle changes in the way I interacted with her. I wasn't cold, but I wasn't warm either. I didn't let her see the cracks in my armor, but I made sure she felt the distance. I didn't want to confront her head-on just yet. I wanted her to stew, to wonder. She'd been playing a game, thinking she could get away with it. Now it was my turn. I made sure she knew I was taking care of business, meeting with a lawyer, making financial plans, figuring out what I wanted in terms of the future. I wasn't just putting the pieces together for revenge. I was making sure that, no matter what, I wouldn't lose everything. And all the while, she didn't say a word. She would watch me from across the room, her eyes constantly searching for something. I could see the guilt, the confusion, the fear in her expression, but she never asked. She knew I was giving her the silent treatment, but I didn't care. I was done with excuses. It was a week later when I got my first real glimpse of how deep her guilt ran. She left her phone on the kitchen counter one afternoon, and for a moment, I hesitated. But then the temptation won out. I picked it up, unlocking it without a second thought. The messages were there, just as I expected, texts between her and P, full of affection, promises to see each other again. But there was something new, a message from her that caught my eye. I'm starting to think I've made the biggest mistake of my life. I stared at the screen, feeling a strange mix of satisfaction and disgust. She knew what she'd done. She knew she'd crossed a line. But the question now was, what was she willing to do to fix it? The message sat there, glowing on the screen, almost taunting me. I'm starting to think I've made the biggest mistake of my life. It should have made me feel something. Anger, betrayal, heartbreak. But instead, it just left me cold. I wasn't surprised by the guilt in her words. Guilt was easy. The hard part would be seeing if she was willing to take responsibility for what she had done. I didn't respond to the message, of course. I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of a reaction, not yet. Instead, I deleted it, along with all the other texts. It wasn't about punishing her with the knowledge of what I'd found. It was about taking control of the situation. She had made her bed, and now I was going to make sure she understood the gravity of it. For the next few days, I kept up the quiet distance. I could feel her eyes on me, searching for signs that I was cracking, that I might forgive her. But I wasn't giving her that. Not yet. I was playing the long game. She had taken me for granted for so long, assuming she could pull away, lie, and it would all be fine. Well, now it was my turn to make her feel the weight of the situation. That's when I started to lay the groundwork for what I knew would be the most important part of my plan. I had already begun the process of separating our finances, setting up my own accounts, taking control of the assets we'd built together. I didn't want her to have any more power over me. I wasn't going to let her take my years of hard work and dedication, all while she played at being someone else's. It wasn't just about protecting myself financially, though. It was about showing her that this wasn't a mistake I was willing to forgive easily. She needed to feel the consequences of what she had done, and I was more than prepared to deliver. On the fifth day, she finally approached me. It was late in the evening, and we were both sitting in the living room. She had been unusually quiet all day, and I could tell she was working up the courage to speak. I've been thinking, she began, her voice tentative, almost pleading. I know I've messed up. I know I've hurt you, and I don't know what I was thinking, but I want to fix it. I can't lose you. I looked at her, my face a mask of indifference. She was trying to control the narrative, trying to make it seem like she was the victim, but I wasn't buying it. You're right about one thing, I said slowly, my voice measured. You've hurt me, and I don't know if that's something that can be fixed. Her face dropped, the guilt apparent in her expression. I'll do whatever it takes, she said, her voice cracking. Please, just don't give up on us. I let the silence stretch between us. I wasn't going to make this easy. Her words hung in the air, desperate, pleading. I'll do whatever it takes, she said, as if that could undo everything. But I knew better. A few words couldn't erase months of deceit. Guilt was not enough. I needed to see if she truly understood the depth of what she'd done. I stayed silent, letting the discomfort between us grow. She fidgeted, eyes avoiding mine, waiting for a sign that I might soften. But I wasn't ready to give her that. Over the next few days, I kept my distance, the silence between us stretching. I spent hours with a lawyer, organizing our finances and gathering all the evidence. It wasn't just about revenge. It was about regaining control. She had taken so much from me already, and now it was my turn to make sure I wouldn't lose more. I started stepping out more often, letting her wonder where I was, what I was doing. I kept my phone locked, not letting her see what I was up to. I knew she was watching, waiting for me to show any signs of weakness, but I wasn't going to give in. Then one evening, I came home to find her sitting at the kitchen table, waiting. This time, there was no pleading, no frantic apologies, just a calm, almost resigned look. But her eyes betrayed her, uncertainty and fear. I've been thinking, she said, her voice steady, but her eyes were nervous. You're right. I've been selfish, and I've hurt you. But what do you want from me? What can I do to make this right? I met her gaze. You can start by being honest. About everything. She stiffened, but nodded. She knew I wasn't buying the act anymore. I've already hurt you, she whispered. I can't take it back. Then why did you do it? I asked, my tone flat, emotionless. Her face tightened, and she faltered. I don't know. I wasn't happy. But that's no excuse. I've been running from my own mistakes. I stood there for a moment, letting her words settle. But it wasn't enough. I wasn't ready to forgive her yet. The days following our conversation felt strangely quiet. She tried, in her own way, to bridge the distance between us, but I couldn't shake the feeling of being trapped in a game I no longer wanted to play. She had betrayed my trust, and no amount of apologies or "I'll do better" could change that. I wasn't ready to give her the satisfaction of forgiveness, not yet. I kept my distance, even when she tried to initiate small talks, asking about my day or trying to make dinner plans. I could see the anxiety in her eyes every time she tried to gauge my reaction. She knew she had lost something precious, but she didn't fully realize how deep the damage ran. The house felt colder now, emptier. It wasn't just the silence, though. It was the feeling that we were no longer living the life we once had, no longer the couple we were. The foundation of everything had cracked, and now we were just living in the ruins, trying to hold it together with broken pieces. But I wasn't going to stay stuck in this limbo. I couldn't. I needed a way out. Not just from her, but from the entire mess she had created. I spent more time focusing on the future, on my own path forward. I couldn't change the past, but I could control what happened next. I made calls, set things in motion, and began taking steps to ensure that no matter what happened, I wouldn't be left in the dust. The separation of finances was just the beginning. I started researching divorce lawyers, gathering documents, and making sure I knew exactly where I stood legally. Still, a part of me wasn't ready to go through with it just yet. I couldn't put my finger on it, but I knew that the real reckoning hadn't come yet. She still hadn't fully realized the gravity of her actions, and I wasn't going to let her off the hook until she did. A few days later, I came home late after running some errands, and she was there, waiting for me. Her expression was different, like she had come to some kind of realization. But I didn't trust it, not yet. She stood up slowly. "We need to talk," she said, her voice softer, more vulnerable than before. I crossed the threshold into the house, taking a deep breath. She stood in the living room when I came in, looking tense but somehow open, like she was finally ready to face what she'd done. The silence between us was suffocating, charged with all the things we'd avoided saying. I had been waiting for this moment, not because I was hopeful, but because I needed to hear her fully acknowledge the damage. "We need to talk," she said, softer than before, her voice shaky. I could see the struggle in her eyes, the way her hands kept clenching and unclenching. I didn't sit. I just stood there, arms crossed, letting the silence press in. She'd had her chances to come clean, to admit everything, and now it was my turn to take control. I wasn't going to let her spin this. "I've been thinking," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I know I've ruined everything. I didn't mean for it to go this far, but I can't change what I did." I met her gaze, unmoved. "No, you can't. You can't undo it. And you can't expect me to forgive you just because you're finally admitting it." Her eyes dropped, but she forced herself to look at me again. "I know I don't deserve forgiveness. I just want you to know I'm sorry, and I'll do whatever it takes to make things right." I shook my head. "You've had your chances. You had months, years even, to fix things. Now you expect me to believe you'll change because you're sorry?" She stepped closer, desperation in her eyes. "Please, just let me show you. I'll prove I can change." My frustration bubbled to the surface. "You think I care about your promises? What you do doesn't matter right now. It's the trust that's broken, and I don't know if that's something I can ever get back." Her face twisted in guilt, but she kept her ground. "I know I've messed up. I'll spend the rest of my life trying to make it right, if you'll just let me." I stepped back, the weight of it all hitting me. "What you want doesn't matter. What I need is to stop pretending everything is fine. And right now, I can't believe you won't do it again." Her voice cracked. "I don't know what you want anymore." I looked at her one last time. "What I want is to move on. I can't keep living like this." And I walked away, leaving her standing there. The next few days felt like a blur. It was strange, almost surreal, living in the house with her knowing everything that had happened. She barely spoke to me. I could see the guilt and shame in her eyes, but I didn't care. The damage was done, and I was beyond the point of salvaging things. I kept myself busy, throwing myself into work and any distraction I could find. I couldn't be around her anymore, not like this. Every time I looked at her, I saw the betrayal, and it was suffocating. I needed space. But even in the silence, there was a heaviness in the air, one that neither of us could escape. I was doing everything I could to avoid confronting the inevitable, but I knew I couldn't keep avoiding it forever. The longer I stayed, the more I felt trapped. It wasn't until the 5th day after our conversation that she finally spoke. I had been out all afternoon, dealing with some things, and when I returned, she was sitting at the kitchen table again. This time, her face was different. It wasn't just guilt, it was something else. A realization, maybe. "I've been thinking," she said, her voice quieter than usual. "I know I can't make up for what I did, and I know you're right. The trust is broken, and I don't know if there's anything I can do to fix that. But I want to try." I stood at the door, not saying anything. Part of me wanted to walk away, to ignore it, but I couldn't. "I don't want to lose you," she continued. "But I can't change what I did. I'm sorry for everything. I know it's not enough, but I need you to know I never meant for any of this to happen." I stayed quiet for a moment, processing her words. Her apology sounded real, but I wasn't sure if I was ready to trust it. "I can't just forget, you know? This isn't something I can forgive in a day." She nodded, her eyes filling with tears. "I understand. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm just asking for a chance." I sighed and turned away, my voice low. "A chance for what? For you to hurt me again?" "I won't hurt you again," she said, desperation in her tone. I walked to the door. I don't know if I can believe that. The following days stretched on in a strange, painful silence. She was still here, but it felt like we were two strangers living in the same house. She would try to talk to me, to reach out, but I couldn't bring myself to engage. Every time she spoke, I heard the words, but they felt empty. Her apologies, her promises to change, they meant nothing now. The trust had been broken beyond repair. I had never imagined that this would be my life. Coming home to a house that felt more like a prison. I had built so much with her, and now it was all falling apart. Every glance at her made the betrayal sting anew. I wanted to scream, to shout at her, to demand answers to all the questions that still lingered. But I didn't. Instead, I chose silence. She was trying so hard, I could see it. But it wasn't enough. No amount of effort could undo the months of lying, the emotional distance, the fact that she had chosen him over me. I spent most of my time away from the house, finding any excuse to be out. It was easier to escape than to face what was happening. I started talking to a divorce lawyer, and I knew in my gut that this was the path I had to take. The thought of living like this for any longer was suffocating. One evening, after I came back from an errand, I found her sitting on the couch, her face pale. The tension in the room was palpable. "I can't do this anymore," she said quietly, looking up at me with tear-filled eyes. My heart twisted, but I didn't let it show. "What do you mean?" "I can't keep pretending that we're okay," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I've hurt you too much, and I can't fix it. I don't want to be the one who destroys us." I stared at her, my mind racing. This wasn't the woman I had married. The confident, loving partner I once knew had crumbled into someone I barely recognized. Her guilt was palpable, but it wasn't enough to erase what had happened. "I'm done," I said finally, my voice cold. "I can't do this anymore." Her eyes widened in shock, but there was no turning back. The damage had already been done. The words hung in the air between us, a brutal truth neither of us could deny anymore. "I'm done." I had said them quietly, almost without emotion, but inside, I was shaking. I was done with the lies, done with the constant weight of betrayal, done with the empty promises. But hearing myself say it out loud still hit me like a punch to the gut. She didn't move for a moment, just stared at me with wide eyes, like she was waiting for me to take it back. I saw the hope flicker in her eyes, the same hope she had clung to for the past few days, thinking maybe she could convince me to forgive her, to give us another chance. But it wasn't that simple anymore. "I don't want to lose you," she whispered, her voice thick with tears. "Please, I'll do anything to make it right." I shook my head. "You can't fix this. You've already broken it, and I don't think I can ever trust you again." The pain on her face was almost too much to bear, but I didn't flinch. I couldn't afford to. She had made her choice, and now I had to make mine. I had spent so much time trying to salvage something that wasn't worth saving. I had to let go. "Please," she said again, her voice barely audible. "I'm sorry. I never meant to hurt you." "I know you're sorry," I said, my voice tight with the effort of holding it together. "But it's too late. I can't go back to that. I can't keep pretending we're okay when everything's falling apart. There was a long pause. She just stared at me, her hands wringing together in her lap, and I saw the full weight of what I was doing sink in for her. She knew this was the end, just as I did. The silence was deafening. Finally, she stood up, and I saw the tears falling freely now, the quiet sobs she was trying to hold back. But I couldn't give her the comfort she was looking for. I couldn't hold her and tell her everything would be okay. "I'm sorry," she said one last time, before turning toward the door. "I really am." I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. The house was quieter than it had been in months. I stood there, staring at the empty space where she had been moments before. The silence felt almost foreign, but in a way, it was exactly what I needed. It was the kind of silence that told me I had made the right decision, even if it didn't feel that way right now. I thought about the years we had spent together, the highs, the lows, the dreams we had shared. It wasn't all bad. We had built a life together, and part of me still mourned that life. But another part of me was relieved. Relieved that I no longer had to carry the weight of her lies and deceit. Relieved that the endless questions about trust and loyalty were no longer my burden to bear. I walked around the house, touching things that once felt like home. Photos, the little trinkets that reminded me of who we were. But now, they just seemed like memories of a life I could no longer recognize. I wasn't the person I was before this all started. And, honestly, I wasn't sure I could ever go back to that person. But I didn't want to go back. As the evening settled in, I sat down on the couch, the weight of it all finally sinking in. I had spent so much time fighting for something that wasn't meant to be. I had invested so much energy into trying to fix what had already been broken beyond repair. But now I was free. I could breathe again. I could rebuild. It wasn't going to be easy. There would be days of doubt, days when I would question whether I had made the right choice. But deep down, I knew I had. I didn't need her to tell me she was sorry anymore. I had already forgiven myself. And as I looked around the empty house, I felt something shift inside me, a sense of clarity, of liberation. I was finally free to start a new chapter, one where I could focus on healing, on finding peace, on rediscovering who I was outside of the wreckage of our marriage.